Well, good afternoon, everyone. Great to see some of our attendees online, as well as a handful of folks here in the conference room at the Chamber. My name is Bill Robinson. I am the chair of the Economic Development Committee and proud board member of the Chamber of Commerce here. See a lot of familiar faces, and so glad to have your participation today. I know we're at 11:35, so we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. And I want to make sure to get us started so that we can end promptly and on time there. If you can go ahead and be prepared to take yourself off mute in a moment when we do our introductions, that would be great. Love to kind of go around the room, both physically and virtually, and make sure we all get a recording of who is here. I'd love to have that. And also the organization with which you're affiliated, if that's not already known or clearly stated on there. I don't know that I necessarily see folks that are unfamiliar with our committee. Sometimes I like to know if this is a first time attendance, and certainly happy to call that out if need be, but very glad to have you here today. So Trish is actually traveling on the road today, and so we have Sabrina helping us out, kind of co-piloting the meeting today, so thank you for that. Absolutely. And one of the things we'll get an opportunity to do here in a moment as well is take a look, if you've not already done so in the meeting request, the minutes from our previous meeting back on the 4th of May, and we'll revisit those here in just a moment. But without further ado, if I can kind of start to my left here, and we'll go around the room and then go ahead and hit our virtual audience as well. So if you'd state your name and the company with which you're affiliated, that'd be great.
Thank you. Kirsty Boyett Zacharias, Executive Director with American Leadership Forum, and also a Chamber board member, and I'm President-elect for the Chamber Board.
Yes, ma'am. Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah. One or two more.
Yeah.
So very good. And again, my name is Bill Robinson. Again, on the board with the Chamber, and financial representative and planner with Principal Financial Group here in Modesto, California as well.
Yes. Looks like we're going this way. I'm Sabrina Gonzalez-Fuel. I am the membership coordinator here at the Modesto Chamber of Commerce, standing in for Trish.
David Wright, City Council of Modesto and insurance broker.
Thanks, Steve. And probably get to some further introductions here in just a moment, but we do have both Lynn Dickerson and Evan Porges here with us as well today as our presenters. So looking forward to that. So for those that are joining us by way of Zoom digitally, if we can go ahead and have you unmute. And it looks like we've got George from Citi.
It's pronounced Jorge.
Jorge, I am so sorry. I had a 50-50 shot and I blew it. I'm so
no
sorry.
problem. It's okay. But Jorge Barrera with the City of Modesto, Economic Development.
Wonderful, thank you. And April?
Yes, April Potter with Opportunity Stanislaus. Great to see you all.
Likewise. And Jalen?
Good morning, all. Jalen French, Director of Community Economic Development, City of Modesto.
Very good. Jennifer?
Morning, Jennifer Hidalgo with the Office of Senator Ana Caballero.
Thank you. Glad you could join us. And looks like we've got Todd as well.
Good morning, Todd Aronson, CEO of Visit Modesto.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And Bob.
Good morning, everybody. Bob Kimball, City of Modesto, Economic Development.
Wonderful. And looks like we just got in under the wire. John, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. John Valines, Modesto Gospel Mission.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. I think we've captured everybody. Don't see any other names up there that we've missed. If need be, we'll circle back around. And actually, just of course on cue here, Monica, glad you could join us. I think you were probably logged in a little bit ago and maybe needed to step out for a couple minutes, but glad you were able to come back in. So Monica, go ahead and introduce yourself if you would.
Hi, my name is Monica Flynn. I'm the new business development specialist here at Opportunity Stanislaus. Just started just a few weeks ago. So
welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you join us today. That's fantastic. So before we get into our presentation today, Sabrina, if you could go ahead and put the previous minutes up, just in case anybody hadn't had an opportunity to review those. So we did have an Economic Development Committee meeting back on the 4th of May, had our couple of presenters in there from Mike Butler with Bird, and also Jarrett Hollis with Emmetis. And so I would accept a motion to approve those minutes. Fair enough. And I don't know that attendance was required, but if we've had an opportunity to review those, so.
April 2, Bob was
Mhm.
there, John was there, Jalen was there. John was there.
Don, approve the minutes so we can move on.
Right.
Hey, Bill, I'll approve. This is John Valines. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, fantastic, John. I appreciate it. Thank you. And I guess maybe just per process here, we would need a second as well.
This is April. I will motion to second.
Thank you so much, April. I appreciate it. All right. And of course, all of this information and content is archived on the economic development page of the chamber website as well. So you're happy to go back there. Welcome to go back there and review any of those minutes and presentations. So before I get too far ahead of myself, I do want to also give a quick nod to our meeting sponsor today. As you see on the screen, there is from Peace of Mind Pest Control. Michael and the fine folks over there have sponsored our lunch today with sandwiches and that. So thank you very much, Mike. Just wanted to give a quick shout out for that support of the committee. And so having said that, if I can go ahead and turn over to Lynn and have you go ahead.
Remote control by any chance?
Unfortunately, don't. If you want, you can take this up and then scroll down.
That way you can drive your presentation. So
yes.
we're going to go ahead and
Probably right where you're standing, actually, right there.
yep,
Yeah.
right there on the corner would be fine.
Yeah, so
There you
I
go.
will-
Thanks,
You
Lynn.
can use the down arrows, or if you prefer, use this. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
We're
So
driving it
we'll
together.
we'll share screen here,
Yep.
and
Here, do a share.
that way our attendees can see your presentation as well. And we'll have you maybe give a quick background and introduction for you and Evan, and then take it on from there.
So I'm Lynn Dickerson. I've been in our community about 22 years, came here to be the publisher of Modesto Bee back in 2000. And then for the last dozen years, I was the executive director, CEO of the Galveston for the Arts. And I retired last July. And now I'm just a full-time do-gooder.
Nice.
And you all know my partner in crime here, Evan Porges.
So yeah, I've been in, basically been in Modesto since 1991, and with my father started a little company called Prime Shine Car Wash. Through that to 20 locations, and then in 2018, how the time flies, sold the business. So the past several years, I've been do-gooding. Immediately after the sale, though, I was still chairman of the Gala Center, Lynn's chairman. Lynn and I got to know each other well, carrying that through COVID, and enjoyed that so much that we said, hey, let's take another challenge on.
Right. Yeah,
So
that was a
here
pretty
we
big
are.
one. Yep.
Here we are with this, but we're really having a lot of fun with it. I don't want to steal any of Lynn's thunder, but we actually really enjoy spreading the word on this to all. So we appreciate you giving us this opportunity. Sorry that there was a little mix up last time, but actually I think it actually worked out better because like all very complicated projects, they evolve.
Sure.
And this one likewise is evolving and getting better and more clear in concept and scope. And so with that, Lynn, I said we're a dog and pony. Lynn's the dog, I'm the pony. I don't know if that sounds quite right. But Lynn could guide us through this.
So I'm going to just set the stage so you know how this all sort of began. Really, for the last several years, Zach Brockman, who was the general manager of the Nuts, and Josh Bridegroom, and Jalen French, and Dave White, others in our community had been looking around saying, is there a better place for there to be the home of the Modesto Nuts? Because what you may not know, I didn't know this, but our John Thurman Field is really not in great shape from a player experience. My husband and I were a host family for Modesto Nuts for 2 summers in a row. And we learned from these baseball players who lived with us that in the whole California League, Modesto is by far the worst facility. And they all, nobody wants to play there. I mean, it's just, it needs a lot of work. So fast forward, so this work was all being done. This work was all being done, just with the intention of someday it would be great to have a new home for the Modesto Nuts. And wouldn't it be great for it to be downtown, because we have a very vibrant, growing, good downtown. So that was sort of all in the works. And then fast forward during COVID, a lot of things happened that changed the scenario. Major League Baseball made some big changes in the way they were structured. They went from being able, like if you were the New York Yankees, for instance, you could have however many farm teams that you could afford to have because you had a lot of money and you could just have a bunch of teams. Well, Major League Baseball tried to level the playing field, no pun intended, by saying every major league team now can only have 4 affiliates. And they, at that time, they got rid of 40 minor league teams throughout the country. And at the same time, they said to the remaining 120 teams, if you want to keep your teams and you want to, remain a minor league baseball team, there are certain standards you have to meet. And so they put these minor league standards out across the country. And they said, you have to meet these standards by opening pitch of 2023. So that really accelerated things.
Standards for the facility.
For the facilities.
Okay.
Standards
For the facility, yes. So that really accelerated the work that these guys had already kind of been doing in the background. You may recall, just a reminder, when the city approved their new, what you guys call it, your vision?
Downtown master plan.
Downtown master plan, just a couple of years ago, it has a baseball park in downtown. So it's not like we just thunk this up and, out of nowhere. So this has been being talked about for a long time. So then you add this Major League Baseball change, really accelerated the need to make a decision. About the same time, the city and the Mariners were working together to say, if we bring John Thurman Field up to standards, what does that look like? What does that cost? Turns out it costs a lot of money, about $20 million. So about the same time this is all going on, there's a group of business people, just coincidentally, you guys will appreciate this, because the way it all started was Randy Clark, who's a longtime businessman in our community leader, went through Leadership Modesto as an old guy. Most people who go through Leadership Modesto are young, and Randy kind of said, I want to experience that. Well, turned out he roomed with Zach Brockman at their retreat or whatever. So Zach is telling him about this need for a new baseball stadium, and Randy gets intrigued and interested. So Randy then starts recruiting other colleagues of his. So Dale Boyette gets interested, Evan gets interested, Charlie Dahl, Randy, Catherine Davis, who's the new CEO of the Valley First Credit Union, some folks like that. And they said, rather than putting good money after bad, in our opinion, and bringing John Thurman Field up to standards, why don't we try to build a new facility at the edge of our downtown, which would expand the core of our downtown, make it more vibrant and make it even better than it is. And that could be a win-win for everybody, because John Thurman Field is not in a position where it's likely to ever do much in terms of economic development. What we have learned, so we started studying other cities where this has been done successfully when this was all going on. And it has been done successfully in a lot of mid-sized cities, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Pensacola, Florida. There's probably a dozen of them we can name. And where it works is when it's part of your downtown and it has walkability. So the places where it has failed, such as Stockton and Fresno, unfortunately, are where you get in your car and you drive to the facility, you go watch the ball game, you get back in your car and you drive home. Don't have walkability to restaurants and bars and train stations and parking garages and housing and all of this. So we started working on this, and we were talking to people in other communities. We were studying where it's been done successfully. We met with this guy named Quint Studer, who many of you may have read his book. It's called
Building a vibrant
Yeah,
community.
building a vibrant community. As Evan always says, he literally wrote the book on this. And he's the guy who did this in Pensacola, Florida, but he now advises cities all over the country on how to make their downtowns more vibrant, how to build a strong core in your downtown. So we're doing all this work, kind of talking to people and checking it out. Well, fortuitously, our friend Todd Aronson gets a phone call from the USL about the same time as we had just started these meetings. Evan, Dale, Charlie, Rand, Catherine, those guys had said, we'll put up some money so that we don't have to get this bogged down in government right away. We'll just put up some of our own money to hire an architect, to hire a economic feasibility consultant, to see if this even makes sense. Does this have a future? Can this be done? So literally they had just sort of ponied up their money. Opportunity Stanislaus was our partner in this. And so, all of the money goes through them so that they can do it as a nonprofit. So we get this, Todd calls us and says, hey, I just got this call from the USL and they're wanting to bring a USL team to the Central Valley. So they fly in from Tampa, Florida, we meet with them and they're a really impressive bunch of people. And they're like, soccer is a hugely fast growing sport in our country. The World Cup is coming to the US. This has been a great investment for investors all over the country. Soccer is hot. It's very popular with the younger demographic. It's popular with the Latino demographic. I mean, it's a perfect fit for our community.
Right.
So he said, we're bringing a team to the Central Valley. Could be Modesto, could be Tracy, could be Manteca, wherever we can find a home. And, again, it was just fortuitous. We had literally just started these meetings and these conversations. So we have a meeting with them. We get all excited. So we reach out to the architect and we say, hey, would you design this thing so it could be used as both a baseball stadium and a soccer stadium? And with a minimal cost to turn it over. So he said, yeah, we can do that. So obviously you have to use artificial turf and other things like that that are important. So he designed this stadium so that it can be used as both. Kind of at the 11th hour, Dale Boyette said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had a football configuration also so that it could be used for high school playoff games and state championships? And because obviously there's a dearth of those kind of facilities around us. So we put in that configuration as well.
Thank you, April, for putting a great presentation together that we're not using.
No problem.
So anyway, as all this stuff develops, the more and more we have worked on this, and it's been almost a year now. We started working on this last July. We have come to realize that this is so much more than a baseball stadium. We've always said it's more than a baseball stadium, but we really now realize it's really a redevelopment project with a baseball stadium and a soccer stadium as the catalyst. Evan and I have met with a bunch of developers and builders and from all over the country, literally. And they've come here, we walked the site, we've shown them what we have to offer. And all of them say, think of this like when you have a development with a golf course. A golf course never makes money. It's always the loser, the money loser, but it's the catalyst for all the growth that happens around this. And they said, that's how you need to think of this project as your stadium, is the catalyst. And where the real fun comes in is all the development that happens around this in terms of housing, Class A office space. We literally don't have any Class A office space in downtown Modesto. Hotels, more restaurants, more parking structures, all sorts of things. So there's a lot of really great things that we believe will happen if we can get this going.
And then can I ask a quick question? What's Class A?
That's the nicest. That's good.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
just, okay.
Yeah.
So no, okay.
So like right now, for instance, both Catherine and Dale have said, we will commit to office space. They both need space for their corporate offices. Catherine needs 70,000 square feet. Dale needs 20,000. And if we can find a developer who's willing to take on this project, we've already got 90,000 square feet of office space with
Sure.
very interested parties.
The other dynamic that changed, and I don't think you mentioned it, is the Mariners own the Nuts now 100% outright. They're interested in the downtown stadium versus the prior owner who was less interested.
Yes.
Only 10% of the minor league teams currently. There's 120 minor league teams now got, as Lynn said, it got shaved down from 160 to 120. Only 10% are owned by their major league affiliate. So the fact that the Seattle Mariners actually own the Nuts today, we think is a big advantage because we have the direct conduit right to the major league. And, you know, we've been up to Seattle, they've been down here. Obviously, Jalen and the Mariners talk regularly. So yeah, that's a good point, Jalen, that we think that's an advantage.
Yeah, we see that as, you know, putting us in a much better position than if just, you know, the 10 of us owned it as investors. So this is very good. So you might say, why don't we share? You know, why are you working so hard on this? And I think the reason, if you really boil it down, the reason that Evan and I care, and Dale and Charlie and all these people who are working on it, is because we believe that this could transform Modesto and make Modesto a much more attractive place to attract talent. We all know that all our major employers really struggle with that. The winery struggles with it. They say the bus deliver more every day to shuttle people back and forth because they don't want to live in our community. We know our hospitals have a really hard time attracting doctors and talent. All of our big employers struggle with it. This Quint Studer guy that we have become disciples of, he has a saying, he says, capital follows talent. Basically, money follows people, talent follows place, and this project creates place. So we believe that if we could get this done, that this would be a transformative project that would really make Modesto a much different kind of community that, you know, think about what the Gallo Center has done for our community. And this would be a similar kind of thing, just really on steroids. And we believe that, again, it would be similar to the Gallo Center in that it would be booked 250, 300 days a year with lots of different things. This wouldn't just be a baseball stadium and a soccer stadium. We would have, you'd have graduations, you'd have 5K runs, you'd have artisan
Farmers
festivals.
markets and beer fests and holidays, snowball fights, concerts, you name it, it can happen there. It's really just a big, as Dale likes to put it, it's just a big facility with nice bathrooms. And
concessions.
And really the analogy is, sure, the outside skating park that they put in the parking lot is lovely and the community really loves that. But it's, you got these porta potties sitting there. I mean, so think of that sitting inside the stadium or just off to the stadium and using the facilities there. So it really is a multi-purpose facility.
Which we really do believe, would have just a ton of uses and be used, a lot. We also think that it really dovetails beautifully into the Stanislaus 2030 project that's underway right now, that's being led by the Community Foundation. Again, how do we attract higher level employers? How do we raise wages in our community, attract jobs and living wages and all that business? So it would be both, a home for the soccer and football, soccer and baseball, and hopefully football. I had a meeting with the Modesto City Schools just a couple of weeks ago. They need another football facility because they have 7 high schools and only 3 football facilities. So I went and met with them to say, would this possibly work for you? Because, the soccer season and the baseball season end just as the football season starts. So theoretically, it could be a home for Modesto City Schools football games every Friday night. Anyway, there's a lot of opportunities. We believe that, would generate tremendous tax revenue from the development that would pop up around it. The stadium itself probably will be a tax exempt entity because it'll be owned by, we don't really know how to structure this thing yet, whether it's going to be some sort of a sports authority, whether the city will own it, how it's going to be structured. But it probably won't be the tax generator, but all the stuff that happens around it is where the tax benefit comes in. And again, it would stimulate private development. We love the fact that it's on 10th Street. Just envision the whole string of pearls, as we call it. You start at the Center Plaza, then you've got 1010 10th Street, then you've got the Gallo Center, then you've got the new $250 million courthouse, then you have this facility, then you have the Tuolumne River Regional Park. So it really could be this beautiful 10th Street corridor with just lots of activity and liveliness. And, where our train station's getting a huge facelift.
Right.
It's going to have a great impact. People would be able to ride the train in.
When we walk around with developers from out of the area, we walk around the site, it's amazing. They're the ones that see the opportunity. Now that's their job, but it's been interesting as we've been going through this process. most of the people that don't see the opportunity are us, who live here, right? For whatever reason, we don't get it. But you talk to folks who do this, to see a town like Modesto, they love Modesto. They love its proximity to the Bay Area. They love that there's now going to be train service coming out. They love the walkability of downtown. They love the trees. They love the people. They love the restaurant. They just see nothing but opportunity with this. And that's exciting. And so we're continuing those conversations. We got kind of a point in this process that we're like, all right, I know how to wash cars. Lincoln run a performing arts center, but we don't know how to develop a downtown. We need help. And so we found ourselves talking and finding and reaching out people who do this. Bless you, Dave. And they see this big vision. And we help with the pretty pictures. We'll show you some pretty pictures. So that kind of helps get people excited, but it's a big leap from the pretty pictures. And so now we have Jay Lynn and his team in the county. We really see this jumping ahead a little bit of the city-county partnership with the private sector as well. I think it's going to have to be a partnership with all three different entities working together to figure this out. So,
yeah, Evan just alluded to it, but a few weeks ago we had a guy from Kansas City, 2 guys from Atlanta, and a guy from Phoenix that were here. They all work for either, one was an architect, the other one's kind of a smart guy.
He's a thinker.
Yeah.
He's a futurist. He's a futurist.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you were going to say, but so we're walking around downtown and he studied us and he's like, your airport's going to be perfect. I go, perfect for what? We've tried that, the planes in the Bay Area, we got stock, no, drones. You're not even thinking, you will not be using airports like airports anymore.
Right.
You will be shuttling people with drones, not just maybe packages, as he sees Amazon would love to use Modesto as a drone hub for their package delivery. Those people going from the Bay Area to the Central Valley, they're going to need a space like the airport. And then if they're only a mile away from downtown living and entertaining, and I mean, he just starts thinking that way. That's what futurists do. But he sees it.
He's a pretty impressive guy. Anyway, we walked, they gave me grief, like I took them on the death march, but we walked that whole thing, we walked up to the river, and like Evan said, they were like, wow, you already have mature trees, and they just had so many, and really most everything down there is sort of dilapidated. So it's not like, it would all be uphill. I mean, it would all be an improvement pretty much. So.
But it is walkable.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And keep in mind also that point of walkability we can't stress, because that's where Fresno and Stockton missed it.
Right.
They expected just to let's go build this new stadium respectfully where John Thurman is, and then everyone will come that way. They're not, and actually John Thurman probably has a higher and best use moving forward. And the city needs that. This is perfect because it's only a couple blocks from all the parking, a couple blocks from all the bars and the restaurants, from the Ace train. It really works well in this spot.
We'll talk about that, and here's all the players, people that are working on this. And then we were fortunate that Patty Hill Thomas, who just retired from the county, is kind of advising us. She knows so much about capital projects and has really been helpful.
Jalen made the list. He's the last, but he made the list.
Good job.
So anyway, the space we're looking at, we looked at 3 different spaces, and we honed in on this one for a lot of reasons. One, it's in the city's master plan. It's that 10th Street string of pearls that I talked about. But also, there were only 10 property owners in this particular space, whereas the other 2 we looked at had like 27 and 31. So obviously much more complicated to be able to acquire the land and get that all under contract and whatever. So the space we're looking at is between 10th and 12th, D and F for the stadium facility itself. Now, if you will, envision all that stuff around that, really all the way to the freeway, a couple blocks to the freeway, and even all the way over to the DMV. And there's just a lot of opportunity for private development to come in and buy up some of those older, underutilized buildings and develop new things. We're under hoteled in our community. We're under office based. There's just a tremendous amount of, we're under housed, as you know, we need housing, both market rate housing and affordable housing. So the space we're looking at is this 10th to 12th D to F. So if you're trying to envision that, kind of butts up against the tomato trucks, goes right up to Stanislaus Foods, Surla's is in kind of
So like,
left field.
if you're looking at this screen, number 1 is the Gallo Founders Building, and number 3 is more or less Surla's, kind of right there.
Got it.
And so that would kind of position you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Surla's would be gone as
Surla's
part of
would
the, part of the
go.
project. Number 3 kind of is, that's really the MID substation there. And that's going to stay. We'll build around it. But yeah, your right field is the Gallo Founders Building. And we've spoken with the family, and they are excited about the project, and we're pleased that we didn't come to them and say, can you knock down the Founders Building?
Yeah.
Right.
And if anything, what we're really, working hard, and Lynn's been working hard with them for many years, trying to get them to have a presence in Modesto. Maybe the world's largest winery ought to have a tasting room in Modesto where they're based. So talking to them with that, and that Founders Building may become some sort of facility like that for them in the stadium.
What I would love for them to do is make that like a little museum kind of thing. 'Cause they have all their old ad campaigns and
Yeah.
photos and cool things, and then have a
Great idea.
tasting room connected to it, where they can showcase their products. They have agreed that they would donate the rest of the block that they own. And Beard owns 3/8 of this property. And Beard is enthusiastic about it. So really, there are fewer obstacles to this space than there were to the others.
Yeah. So I mean, these were interesting, because the slide on the right,
I apologize.
that's okay. The slide on the right kind of shows you where John Thurman is right now in the lower left there, compared to where the new development's being proposed. So it's really not that far away. And, as we've talked over the years about a river walk concept, John Thurman, and the old Muni, you see that being developed with various different types of housing options, retail options. And all of a sudden, you have a community over there that's jumping on the Stanislaus River Parkway on their bikes, on their walking, and they're walking over now to the downtown development through that parkway over to the River District. You could certainly see that happening.
So you may have noticed our first slide, we call this the River District. So we just kind of made that little change.
Oh, sorry. Try again.
We have affectionately called this the Great Valley Coliseum, just as our working title, but we realize we need to refer to this more as the whole district. And in places where this has been hugely successful, like some of the cities I mentioned, they have a rail yard district or a arts district or something district, and they kind of get all of those blocks under this umbrella, certain tax status and different things. And then that whole area is what gets developed, and you might have a master developer who comes in and does the whole thing, or you might parse it out and have various developers who come in and do different parts of it. So the River District is our new name. I just thought of that one night at dinner. I mean, we can obviously, there may be a better name for it, but I do love the fact that it's close to the river, and, rivers have become a very attractive feature in many cities. Back in the day, we put our poorest parts of town on the river for whatever reason. But, there are places now that the river has become the real attraction to their downtown. So we like this idea of the River District. So anyway, here's baseball pictures. The other thing that we love about this is the trendy thing right now in building these facilities is that you have less fixed seating and more kind of standing around room, if you will. So they call them ballpark living rooms. So instead of having just everybody sits in a seat like you do now at John Thurman Field, you have these areas with high boy tables and various places where you just congregate, and that's really attractive to millennials and the younger generation. And so this was designed with that in mind. There's like 3 or 4 of those in this design.
So it's kind of more promenade or concourse kind of idea, right?
Yeah, less suites. They don't really build like executive suites so much anymore.
It's this group, they still have this need, even though they're at a game secondary, maybe third. It's being social, it's hanging out, it's being with your peeps. So, you go to Giants games these days, we tend to just go hang out at the bar. And the game's on the screen, oh yeah, the game's behind me, but they're used differently today. And so modern day designers, our fella Tom Larimer, who's did the designs, and he's designed Petco Park and Atlanta stadiums, that's what they're doing now. They're creating these social spaces.
This stadium would hold 4,000 people.
4,500 for baseball.
And then it would have, for a concert configuration, it's 11,500, which again, doesn't compete with the Gallo Center because it's a completely different level of artist. It would be an arena artist versus a performing arts center artist. So it wouldn't harm the Gallo Center, but you would just be able to get much bigger. I really would envision that most of the performers would be Latino performers, quite honestly, because there are a lot of Latino performers that would do really well in that size venue.
And country.
And country.
How would it compete with, Fruit Yard?
It would compete with the Fruit Yard. They hold 4,500, so it would be more than twice as big. So you still would be able to get a higher level artist,
Right.
but it probably would.
Like Garth Brooks.
Probably not Garth Brooks. He's probably too big, but
Give him a couple years, he'll.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I'll come
Yeah.
around.
but you would be able to get some pretty big names.
When they're wheeling Garth out, we'll be able to.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
You gotta get them up on
Yeah,
their way out.
farewell to him. So this, up at the top, we also love this. So that's the concourse where you go in, and that's on 11th Street. And we really love this too. So this was designed to be big and wide and beautiful. And, he's designed it with almond trees and, things to really celebrate our agricultural heritage. But those things are also used as gathering places. When we talked to Charlotte, North Carolina, they have just opened a stadium recently, and their concourse gets used every Friday night by young people. There's something going on there all the time. So it in itself becomes like a venue, David.
So are you saying that that's the 11th Street with sort of dead end right there and walk right into the?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And so then there's the football layout. Not a ton of room on the football layout, but it does work. And like I said, I met with the Modesto City Schools people the other day, and then I connected them with the right people at the city. So I'm hoping that they're having some conversations about what that would look like. And, that would be great if they were interested, because that then is another tenant, so to speak, that would help pay the mortgage on this thing. And then the concert layout that we mentioned, 11,500 capacity for that. Soccer. We love the soccer thing. There's a lot of things we love about it. Some I've already mentioned, but another one is that all these games are televised on ESPN2 or ESPN Plus, which is like a commercial for our town every single time they have a game. So they believe that they will find an ownership group for both a men's team and a women's team.
Okay.
Again, the fast growing sport is hugely popular. Since this is sort
That'd be
of,
cool.
we haven't been very public about this. I mean, there have been a couple of things in the paper and, people find out about it just sort of organically, but I've been contacted by 2 or 3 of the local kind of semi-professional soccer teams who, are all very excited and want to know more about it. But soccer really does have there's some real sex appeal to that. And we think that that's one of the things that will make this a real viable project. So here are just some numbers. The USL have been great partners. Quite honestly, they've hired a consultant on their nickel that is really helping us. And he does this in communities all over the country where they build facilities. So he's supplied some of these numbers, but you can just see some of the stats on soccer fans. Obviously, it's a good demographic. It also fits our community really well. So we believe that this gives us some real project.
Nice.
And then again, just some growth statistics. It's a very fast growing sport. They've expanded tremendously in the past few years. It's become a hugely successful investment for the investors, because they're now worth a lot more than they used to be. You can see their attendance has gone from 32,000 in 2011 to 3.2 million in 10 years. So we would love
They get
for
about
us to get.
5,000 a game.
Yeah, he said to me, if we didn't have 4,000 people a game, I would consider it a failure.
Wow.
And again, we've got to remember, if we can't make this happen here, they will go somewhere else.
Right.
I mean, somebody in the valley will take them, and they'll find.
Somebody's gonna get it.
a
We're
place.
gonna be going to Manteca to watch a game. If we don't do it here. I know. That's the nature of it. They're gonna find a place here in the valley.
So here are some places where this has worked really well in the last few years. Some are, bigger cities than us. some are suburban cities, but these are just places where they've done what we're trying to do very successfully.
Have they done it so it's all three sports can be on that same footprint?
A lot of places have done both baseball and soccer. Tulsa, for instance, did not build theirs that way. They're now regretting it. So now they're out building a new soccer stadium because trying to retrofit it doesn't work very well.
Right.
But if you do it right on the front end, it has worked really, really well. So there are quite a few places where they've done both baseball and soccer. I don't
The
know.
USL and minor league baseball work together a fair amount, because this is not, this conversation is happening across the country.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
just building a single
Would
use
imagine so.
facility tends not to be, you know, as economically feasible. So this conversation is being had.
So here are some of the other places that we are looking at as potential models. You know, Knoxville's obviously bigger than us, but again, they have theirs is just underway. They're gonna, I mean, it's not even open yet. They're proposed to open in 2024. But you can read it if you want to Google it. There's a lot of news stories about their city council approving it and all the sausage being made there. And then Reno, you know, opened theirs 13 years ago. It's a combination of baseball and soccer. It's, you know, been very successful for them. And as you can see, it's right in the heart of their downtown. Memphis, they're just 22 years old.
Baseball.
This one is the most like us, and we really are latching on to them. So Fort Wayne is a city almost exactly the same size as us. Their county's almost exactly the same size as us. Keep in mind, as Sue Swallow likes to say, but they have a winter. You know, we don't have a winter. We've got way better weather than they do. But they're just kind of a Rust Belt city that, you know, was in decline. They opened this in 2009. Sue had a long conversation with their mayor the other day. Lou Friedman, who's on our committee, has talked to the owner of the team and the major developer. So we've talked to a lot of different people. And Jalen, I think your whole committee had a call with them, right? They've had $1 billion of development since they opened theirs. So since 2009. So it has really done what we're proposing would happen in their city. Now, again, theirs was $46 million. Our price tag is higher than that. We're trying to figure out ways to get our price tag down. But it has been a very, very successful initiative for Fort Wayne.
That was also 2009 and prices were different.
Obviously, yeah, prices have
Right.
gone up. And, you know, California, you just have to add a lot of money from California. We're a much more expensive place to get any of this stuff done. So this is, Louisville is a relatively new one. So anyway, we hired this company called the Cosmont Company out of Southern California, and they're like a
Feasibility,
Feasibility.
economic feasibility.
and the county has used them before, and the city has just hired them to do some work. So they, Dave White knew of them, and we used them because we felt like they had credibility with both our city and our county. We didn't want to hire somebody that they were going to discount and say, well, these guys don't know what they're talking about. So we hired them. They worked with the city and county staff, and they came up with proposed models of how you would pay for this, basically. And so the city and the county now have those data points. They're analyzing them. We're trying to figure out, you know, what works. And like Evan said earlier, you know, we have to figure out what the ownership structure would look like. You know, how do we structure this? Is it a sports authority? Is it some kind of a district? You know, what's the right way to do it? We feel that to get it done, it will have to be a public-private partnership like the Gallo Center was. What we're hoping is that the city and the county would be partners, and then, you know, we'd have to go raise some money. And again, we have to have some sort of an entity, because private citizens aren't going to give their money to the government. You know, it has to be some sort of a nonprofit entity where we can solicit donations. And then also there's big money every year in terms of negotiating the lease with the Mariners and the USL teams. So they basically pay the rent, they pay the bond debt, guarantee that pretty much through their arrangement. So right now, the MLB and the USL are working on a joint use agreement, like how they split concession revenue, how they split naming rights, all those kinds of things. Jalen and his team are starting talks with them, because if this doesn't go any further, Evan and I go back to, whatever we do when we don't do
We're gonna have to
this.
find something else.
Then, the city has a problem that they have to figure out, do we keep the nuts or do we let the nuts go? Or do we spend $20 million on John Thurman Field? So, that'll become a different problem or a different situation if this doesn't go any further. But Evan and I have been doing a lot of work trying to identify developers, and we've talked to some pretty high level people. And like he said, a lot of them see real potential here. So we are hoping to get some sort of an RFI or a promotional material or something that we can give out to developers so that we can be working in the background trying to solicit support of this and interest, so that when the time comes, if the city and the city council and the county do decide they're interested and they're on board, that we're ready to go, that we've got developers kind of lined up and interested. There's a lot of work to be done. We have to sort of aggregate the land and figure out who buys the land and how does that all work. So there's still a ton of work to be done. But quite honestly, we've done a lot in less than a year also. So we get a little discouraged sometimes and think, should we keep
Have a
at
glass
this?
of wine.
There you go.
But we just, we're passionate about Modesto and Stanislaus County, and seeing this region become more than what it is, because there's a ton of potential. If we don't do it, someone will do it. And we just find ourselves at this interesting crossroads right now with both Major League Baseball, professional soccer. They want to be here. They want to figure out a way to be here. Then you put the train station, throw that in. You add that we have a wonderful, vibrant, existing downtown. So we're not doing this in order to build a vibrant downtown. It already exists. So it just adds to it. And then that alone just creates this other environment for the private developers to want to come on in here and do their work. So it's just a unique opportunity in time. And Jalen, you could speak to the fact that you guys have been talking about this a long time. It's been part of the plan. Whether you love us or hate us, that we've actually just come and lit a fire under it. But we just felt, we had to bring it to the forefront to see if we can get this done, because it's just this sliding door opportunity right now. So.
I said to Jalen the other day, and I really do believe this, I feel like this is lightning in a bottle. And if we don't capitalize on it, this might not happen again for 30 or 40 years. I mean, the 22 years I've lived here, I've seen this happen one time, and it was with the Gallo Center, where you had the private sector come forward and say, we're going to make something big and good happen in our community. And, God bless Marie Gallo, had it not been for her, it wouldn't have happened. She had to fight her family on it. I mean, it was not an easy thing to get done. The city pulled out their support at the last minute. It could have gone south then. I mean, thank goodness it happened. And it literally opened on the cusp of the Great Recession. I mean, I used to always say, had we not gotten it open when we did, it would have never happened. Right. And thank goodness we did, because it really has changed our town and just been such a wonderful thing. So I don't remember ever having this much energy and enthusiasm from a group of private citizens, successful business people who are working hard to say, we want to be partners with you, government, in making something really special happen in our community. So if it doesn't happen, it will be a crying shame, truthfully, because right now there's a lot of people that really are working hard to try to make this happen. But we can't do it alone, and I don't really think the city and the county can do it alone. So if we can figure out how to work together, the county won't.
I know, but they can.
Evan has said, and I think he's accurate, we have a broke city and a stubborn county, which is a bad combination, because the county doesn't want to take the lead, even though they have much more financial resources than the city. They think it should be the city's project, and I guess it should be. They're very sensitive to the whole county, and that if you're a supervisor that oversees Ceres and Patterson, then you don't want your constituents thinking that you're spending money on Modesto, but we are the county seat and it is good for the whole county.
We do view this as a regional project. This is a countywide project. Yes, it's in Modesto, but I mean, we already have so much in Modesto going on that make this project work. It wouldn't be the same in Turlock. I'm sorry if it was, Turlock and some of the other areas of Patterson, but those folks are going to generate the rewards from this. And those companies out there are going to generate rewards from having this here and showing their employees what kind of livability this community is.
And I can speak from experience. The Gallo Center draws, primarily from a 5-county region, but I mean, Gallo Center draws from all over states, sometimes, according to the artist, and it's been good for the whole county.
So where's the thought from the big corporations that we have in the county here to get some buy-in on that? They're wanting to maybe be a part financially of this, or they're just sitting back and waiting to see.
We haven't made that ask of anyone.
Yeah, I would say, Dave, we're at this point where if the city and the county can't get it to that next, we've not gone out and knocked on doors and said, hey, here's your $1 million or $5 million. This is what you can get for those types of donations. We just haven't done that yet.
But is there an appetite from like the hospitals and some of the big corporations that if the city and county came together and said, yeah, we want this project to happen, you think you're gonna have some buy-in?
We believe that there will be.
I think just anecdotally, as I talk to my business friends out, I would be surprised if the private sector couldn't raise $20 billion as a part of this project.
And we know, I had a conversation early on with Gino Patrizio at Sutter. He was super enthusiastic about it. They became the title sponsor or the Navy sponsor for the River Cats. So we do believe, I know Warren Kirk has been very frustrated with the lack of economic development. I mean, I serve on the Opportunity Stanislaus board with him, and many times he's brought up how he feels like we aren't doing enough in our community. And then he's like, look at Manteca, look at Tracy, he just names all these other communities. So to Evan's point, we haven't gone and talked to these people or asked them for help because we don't know what we're asking for yet. We did meet with a very successful developer in town who said, let's not even get Governor Clinton involved. Let's just do this through the private sector. We're like, yeah, that sounds good. And then our guy from the USL said, no, that really won't work. You have to have government because the ballpark piece of this is not a money maker. It's not. It's all the other stuff that's where you make your money. And it really does have to be a partnership with government. So that particular person believes that there are some farm families that are looking to sell their farms, and you have that money you've got to put in something else. So we're optimistic that there would be interest in.
Where are the investors? Have they financially, they're wishy-washy, or they're just not committing? Or?
They're just holding their cards very close to their vest. I think they don't want to show their hand till the city shows their hand. And at some point, somebody's got to show their hand. I said to them, we're trying to steal second with our foot on first,
Right.
We're not sure, Dave, whether they want to help with upfront money as a part of the project, or whether they view that their, I'll say $1.5 million between them and the USL, their yearly rent payment, which would cover, the bond, whether that's their contribution on the back end. That's something that Jalen and his team will have to work through with them. But they've not given us that indication.
They have said from the very beginning that they want this done. They're very supportive of it, whatever. If I were an employee of the city of Modesto and I was negotiating with them, I would say, look, for the last however many years, we've carried the water on the John Thurman Field. There's been a big deficit that we've covered every year. You guys have had a real sweetheart of a deal with not paying very much in rent. So I would ask a lot on the front end, and I would also make sure that the agreement was coterminous with the length of the bond. So if we have to do a 20-year bond, we would have to have a 20-year commitment that they're going to stay in our community and keep their team here. And I believe that they will be open to that kind of thing.
Note to self, land is our negotiation.
Right.
Now, there was a big if before I said that.
Lynn, real quickly, you mentioned during your presentation that you're looking for ways to kind of get the cost of the project down. What kind of range are we looking at right now for the scope of the project?
So 85 to 120 million dollars. So it's a
Right, big window,
it's
sure.
a big range.
Yep.
And part of it is because of the whole inflation factor, because they really have a hard time nailing down what costs would be because of the inflation as it is.
Sure.
But also, one of the expensive parts of it is it's a $20 million of it is to excavate down 17 feet, is that right? So I was like, why do we have to do that? And the reason we have to do that is because it's in such a tight urban space. So there's a possibility that we could buy more land, and that might be cheaper than the excavation, but they would need a bigger space if they don't excavate down. So to save that 20 million, we might have to buy another 2 blocks or something, but.
Can we have a shovel party?
Right.
I love
Always
Kirsty. She's
looking
always
for
a
a
party
party.
girl.
There's a lot of shells.
Bring the wine.
Yeah.
But I did talk to the architect the other day, and I just said, we're not gonna get this done for $100 million. We've got to figure out a way to make this less expensive. And so he's, working on that.
What do the 10 business owners think of this?
So there was only one of them who was mean to me. And he's come around, but they're all like, yeah, sounds good to me. I mean, obviously, they want to be paid for their
Sure.
property.
Well, they should.
Unfortunately, one of them is Burnside, and they've just gone through the transition from their other
Just with
property.
her, right? Yeah.
And so, but even Brent was, open and sure, for the betterment of the team.
Yes.
Is that in your cost, the $100,000?
No, it's not.
Oh,
But-
wow.
Mhm.
It's not gonna be that's just construction costs. But the land, we don't think the land is hugely expensive. Yeah, we don't really know, but
A lot of it's parking lot. A lot of it's really nothing.
like one of the spaces is literally empty.
Right.
The crematorium, he was the only one that was cranky with me, but I think now that he understands he would be bought out at market rate, he's okay.
Right.
The place where the police use for their evidence room, that's one of the spaces. There's another body shop kind of place. I mean, there's.
Beer district is 3/8 of it, and the beer family, they look to exchange maybe some property with the city. So, I think market rate's market rate. You appraise them, and,
Right.
that's what it is.
There is a number.
There's a number.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's not, it's not scary. We're not taking it away from people.
Sure.
Just go through the process.
And does that footprint include parking?
It does not. So here's the deal with parking, what we've learned from all of the places that we've talked to. They don't really build parking with these things. They let the market take care of parking. And so they may build 200 spaces or something. But what they said to us, and really we've heard this over and over and over again, is that you build it where it's within walking distance of your current parking garages, and ours would be, it's within 3 blocks, it's within blocks of 3 parking garages. Then you've got people like Greg Reed, who owns property right next door. And he's already sort of salivating over this. I mean, if I was Mike West, I'd be turning some of my land into
And
parking.
you've really got the Muni Golf Course. Muni Golf Course is not a far walk from there. You do the river trail. I mean, that would be an ideal situation on
That's a
parking.
bit of a walk.
And the old, what's that?
From Muni to there is a
Oh,
bit of a
yeah,
walk.
just go right underneath the bridges. You got an active trail there.
Jump on our bird scooters.
There you go, right?
Jump on
Yeah.
our scooters.
But even parking garages, we already.
You had to get that going.
Right, work. So no, it doesn't build in parking. The courthouse is not building any parking.
Oh, no, I saw the front
47
stage, very
spaces.
little parking.
The part of the thing about the parking is the developers saying you almost don't want to do it. What happens is you take away this economic lift that happens to downtown, with the restaurants and the bars. What you want people to do is have to park a few blocks away so that on their way there and on their way back.
So you have to walk it.
So you have to walk. It's a
Yeah.
part of the economic engine of the development. Is not providing a place for me to drive from the north part of town to the ballpark, get on my car, go to the game, go to the car, and then go home.
Yes.
And there's gonna be some kind of balancing act there,
Yeah,
right?
you have to have some handicap spaces. I mean, there's
Sure.
a little bit, but
But
And
also
or shuttle service or whatever kind of thing,
but
right?
again, those are entrepreneurial
Yep,
opportunities.
yep,
All
yep,
those
you got there.
little houses that are around there.
Yep.
Those, I mean, the the office building potential, and, you know, those are gonna be really popular, but also I think people, I suspect people will be selling $20 parking spots.
Sure,
you know,
you've got
further out.
churches all around there.
It's-
that,
it's just
you know,
what happens.
One way for them to raise it.
Yeah,
It's
That's
just,
what-
it's just what happens.
So one of the questions that I had too, and I didn't want to monopolize the conversation here, you know, you mentioned about some kind of a partnership between private sector and, you know, city, county, that kind of thing. Is there another one of these kind of sister cities or towns? You mentioned Fort Wayne and some of these where, I mean, just because we can do it a way does not necessarily mean it's the best way, air quotes. Because that could be defined a variety of different ways depending on who you're talking to. But I'm looking for, I guess, maybe what would that look like in combination, and how would you do that truly from an ownership standpoint? Who really gets what loudest voice at the table, and what does that look like, right? Because sometimes those partnerships, while necessary, are a little bit kind of hard to cobble together sometimes, right? Between municipality and private sector. So
We really hope to learn more about that we're gonna take a field trip at some point to Tulsa.
Okay.
And maybe even to Fort Wayne, and Fort Wayne's mayor has offered to come here. Every city we've talked to has done it differently.
Sure,
So there
okay.
are like a bunch of different models, and
Okay.
we're trying to figure out what.
So there's no one model.
There's not
Okay.
one model.
Okay.
yeah.
In Seattle, when we went up there and met with the owner of the Mariners, he was super excited. Their relationship, they're just a tenant up there at that stadium. So King County owns their stadium and they're a tenant. And he's super excited because they manage it. And so they would see a similar relationship here, that they would be the manager of the facility. So they would be the booking agent for all the different events that are occurring there. So that becomes a part of their revenue model, so that they can help pay the rent to the city and county or the entity that owns the stadium.
Yeah, and just from my experience with these things, you never have like a clear path and you're like, okay, let's just go down this path. And then
Sure.
you kind of duck walk a little bit as you go, and then
Yep.
it kind of morphs and forms, and, you know, just not your experience, but the experience with the Gallo Art Center was the same way. You know, you just kind of figuring it out as you go.
Sure.
We're just trying to go see as many models as we can and try to figure out what's gonna work.
Good.
You know,
Good,
one
excellent.
thing, and I would ask this of you guys as you talk about it, please don't call it the ballpark project.
Okay.
You know, because
Okay.
people do get worked up about that. They're like, well, we've got a perfectly good ballpark right over there. Why do we need to spend, you know, millions of dollars? So I think we have to change the narrative so that we are talking about, you know, the river district or whatever we end up calling
Right.
it, but it's a redevelopment district where we envision, you know, tremendous change with this facility and kind of as the catalyst in the middle of it.
Well, when I talk to people, and I mentioned professional soccer team, everybody gets excited.
Sure.
Talk about baseball, I'm like, care less.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
you know, you're right, we have to change the narrative. And I think it started off on the wrong narrative that put some bad taste in people's mouth. We're now, you're talking about event center, you're talking about high school football, you're talking about soccer, even our, you know, soccer leagues, our kids soccer league could have their playoffs there would attract them all to California.
Sure.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of opportunity to really change that narrative.
Right.
River Park, I love that. You know, so.
Right. A large concert venue and what have you. Yeah.
I just had a guy say to me, a Sacramento guy that was Kristen Olson's new husband, but he said to me the other day, because I was bringing her up to speed on this, and he goes, well, what if you just didn't have the baseball piece? How much could you save if you didn't have a baseball configuration? So I was like, what? This all started as a baseball thing. And then I started thinking, you know, really and truly, at the end of the day, you know, anybody from the nuts, that's the least important piece of this in many ways.
And it's not very long season.
Right, and
Could see that.
like you said, it's not the sexy sport, you know, soccer is. And so if the Mariners play hardball and they won't participate, then maybe we say, okay, we don't make it a baseball stadium, we just make it a soccer and a football stadium. And that
So,
potentially could be even better.
yeah, kind of to tie to that, this is like Jalen, the resident, talking, not the city. It's
Appreciate
really-
that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's really like, it's a redevelopment, it's an investment in our community play that happens to dovetail nicely into what's happening at John Thurman, Mariners ownership, all of that. It's really an opportunity, and some could say, well, is the baseball the opportunity? Well, I don't know, that's the one that's in front of us right now. If you look at the downtown master plan, if you look at some of the other things that we tried to do, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the amenities, the quality of the, ambiance and environment of our downtown. This is a potential way to do it. It's a big price tag, right? It's a big price tag. And the other elephant in the room is the kind of sales tax measure and how these things, kind of fit with each other, because it's kind of two asks now for the taxpayer. So,
Well, and like how much of that tag would be capital campaign, for example, versus county funds or however that comes together, right?
And those are things we don't know yet.
Sure.
And I know that all this conversation makes Joe a little bit nervous because we really have to get that sales tax passed. I mean, all of us should work as hard as we can. We have to get that sales tax passed because our city desperately needs that. Joe said to me a few months ago that if we had the same sales tax rate as Stockton, it would mean $90 million a year more in our coffers. We could do a lot of good stuff with $90 million.
Sure.
Now if it goes on the ballot, which I assume
So
it
if we have
will.
the same as Patterson's 9% sales tax. And we're the lowest.
We're
in
even the
county.
lowest in our county.
Yeah, we're the lowest in the county. So, Turlock and those cities have
The
a higher
biggest
sales
need.
tax.
So, right now we're trying to save our way to prosperity. Every year we have this $8 to $12 million deficit and we just have to cut more stuff. We don't cut the mistletoe out of the trees. We let policemen go or don't hire them, we've got to get the sales tax passed. And then that gives the city some breathing room to be able to say, oh, well, maybe we can look at, right now they're just hunkered down trying to survive because their sales tax rate is so low. And so we've got to help them get that passed in November. And then I'm hopeful that they'll then be more enthusiastic about trying to make this happen. So Joe kind of wanted us to be on the down low, so we don't mess up, we don't get people upset and thinking that the sales tax would be funding this for people who are not a fan of this.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not a baseball project.
Right. It's the
larger.
redevelopment.
It's this development
Yeah.
project for downtown.
Sure.
And there will be, there's 800 people who go to the Nuts games. We hope that if we got this, there'd be a lot more because it would attract more people. But I was sitting at the Nuts game 2 weeks ago with Trevor, the guy from the Mariners, and he said, Lynn, and pointed out to me this guy who was up to bat, number 11. He said, we paid $4 million signing bonus for this guy. He was our number 1 draft pick. And he said, he can't see well enough in this stadium to hit the ball, see the ball. And he said, this is a real big investment of ours, and we have to have him in a facility where we can realize the development. And he said, but all these people sitting around, they think this is a nice experience. This is just fine. Why do we need a new ballpark? So, those things are uphill battles to educate people. And that's when we've got to talk the story that it's so much more than just a new home for the Nuts.
What would come of the old stadium?
That would be for the city to determine. Modesto City Schools has some interest in buying it because they need more facilities for Modesto High. Jalen can probably speak to that more than I can, but it would be an asset for them to figure out what to do with.
Interesting.
Other soccer leagues have looked there as well. I mentioned the schools. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's a tear down and it's a complete redevelopment of that. I mean, I don't know. That there's not endless, but there's many possibilities on what you do there.
So it's not a great neighborhood, and I could just see it becoming another.
No, I think something good will happen from it.
It could become a nice neighborhood. It could become a nice neighborhood.
But there's a lot of demand for affordable housing on the Muni. It has those beautiful trees. I mean, it could be a nice, one of the terms now is
Workplace housing.
Workplace housing.
Workforce
housing.
However, it's the biggest piece of land that the city owns. That could be a beautiful park. And once we get rid of it, we'll never have anything like it again. So you got to really think about, it's a unique piece of property that could be an event center for graffiti, weekend they have down there, a lot of different things.
Right.
And so, that's something, some of us on the council are really concerned about because we will never have a piece of property like that one again. So when you start thinking of that,
That's fair.
like that, and there's a lot of places over there, like can put affordable housing, a lot of empty land and stuff, but that is a jewel, it's just like the river. You know, it has a lot of old 100-year-old trees, and it just, you know, something.
It's an underutilized asset.
Right.
I will ask one more question. Then did any of your plans change when Zach moved and Veronica stepped in? Like, I know, but he was a big catalyst.
Yeah, no,
No.
he just forgot to tell me I was supposed to speak to you guys 2 months ago. That's all. Yeah.
Zach who?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, Zach was great, and
Really
we were sad to see him go,
Yeah.
because we loved him, and he really was a great partner, and, you know, I don't think that we'd be where we are without him.
The guy who wrote the book stole him. He went to
Yeah.
go work for Quinn Studer.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably got that job because of all this
Yeah,
work we're
right.
doing, because we talked to Quinn Studer a bunch of times.
Nice.
Yeah.
So another quick question, just from a proximity standpoint, if I understand correctly, the south corridor on D Street there to that proposed property, isn't that adjacent to where the Salvation Army homeless shelter, and what conversation have you had? Any kind of concerns about that?
You know,
If any.
I don't have any concerns about that,
Okay.
truthfully. I mean. it
Or
has
have you
come
heard
up.
others that,
I've had other people ask me about it.
Okay.
So I always quote Josh Bridegroom in this situation. And Josh has this great little exercise he uses when I used to be on the Downtown Partnership Board. And just envision this. So he would have a glass, just an empty glass, and he'd give us all little Post-it notes. Some were pink and some were yellow. And we had to write all the good things about downtown on the pink ones. And then we had to write all the bad things on the yellow ones. So he'd have us put the yellow ones in the cup. And you got this cup full of yellow bad stuff. And then we put all our good stuff in. And by the time you put all the pink ones in with the yellow ones don't stand out so much. And his point was, every city has negative stuff. Every city has homeless people. Every city has crime, you know, they all have stuff. The way you get rid of that, you don't get rid of it, but the way you minimize it is to bring in more good stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't really envision this as being a problem. There's not, I don't think, David, probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, I don't think there's a lot of crime issues or whatever around the shelter, because they police that and monitor it, and they've got rules, and, you know, people sleep there. So it's probably safer than other parts of town where you've just got homeless people congregating on their own. So personally, I don't think it's a problem. It might be one of those things that the land becomes so valuable that they would be forced to move, or, you know, because
And they may sell it
property
for a
owners.
new office tower or hotel there and
Yeah.
relocate.
Plus,
who knows?
plus the redevelopment of that downtown area really bring things up, which
Right.
means that it brings the eye of the city more on that,
sure.
which means that we're going to make sure that it's policed better,
Mhm.
because it's not the old rundown part of town, it's the nice part of town.
Yep.
We want to keep it looking nice, and we want to make sure.
And
Yeah,
to
good point.
Dave's point, what tends to happen is, with Josh's point also, is that, you know, those that are looking for bad things to do kind of go away from the nice stuff.
Sure.
You know, that's
Or
not
where
where
people
the
gather.
people are, and the
Right.
nice thing that's not where they live, or where they do their work, they go
Yeah.
to the seedy
Do
parts.
it where it's less visible.
That's
Sure,
right.
yep.
That's right.
Yep.
So
Got
that's been our reaction to that comment. about
Okay.
Being down.
Fair enough. I just thought I'd ask.
That's a good question.
Okay. Well, I know we're getting a little bit short on time. We've had a ton of great conversations and some really good dialogue. I don't know if there's any other questions out with our Zoom audience as well. Todd, I noticed that you unmuted there. If you've got a question or comment to share out. Or...
I'm totally okay. I think this is great. Remember that our perception of ourselves is significantly worse than any visitor's perception will always be, to emphasize what Lynn and Evan were just talking about.
Sure, good point. Thank you. Fantastic. Well, with that, we typically wrap with a hard stop at 1. We're just a little bit before that. And so we are looking to secure our next speaker and presenter. And if I understand correctly, we're looking there likely on the 6th of July will be our first Wednesday of the month as our usual landing spot for this committee. So we'll have that in there and like I said, actively working to secure that speaker. We'd love to have you come back and join us at that time. And
I want to say thank you to
lunch will be
April
provided
Potter
again.
for putting our presentation together.
Good job,
Thank you,
April.
April.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Anytime.
And hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and very productive month of June. Thanks so much.
All right,
Good. Turn off our recording.
all right. So Tony can go back to us.
Nice. There you go. Nice.
I really like it.